If you don't follow these property laws, you will go to prison. Alright, maybe not prison. So these property laws came into place, well, for hundreds of years, but specifically in the 15th century in 1407, they really started to take the shape of the laws that we see today. Now, in general, can you go to prison for breaking some of these laws? Well, yes, but it's very obvious and very deliberate. It's really about staying on the right side of the law. So let's break down some of the most common pieces of legislation and law-abiding citizens that we can be. The first major one is a redress scheme. So you might have heard of the property ombudsman or TPO. Every estate agent needs to be registered with some form of redress scheme. There is the property redress scheme, but the major one is TPO, which was formed and backed by the government in 1990. This is kind of like an arbiter. It basically shows a commitment to uphold a set of rules, and it also acts as a mediator if a customer's annoyed. So, you know, deal packages, for example. So my business, Aspire Property Group, where we're finding properties for people, we need to be registered with a redress scheme as well. And the reason why it's important is, number one, you have set requirements to be a part of a redress scheme. So, for example, public liability insurance, you're going to have your data protection, private indemnity, and a few other insurances in place, including anti-money laundering. And this is really to give customers confidence that you are following the rule book. Does it mean you're amazing or crap? I don't know. But it definitely shows that you are being compliant. Also, what this gives people confidence of is every now and then you're not going to agree with each other. Say I've got an investor and something goes wrong with something, and in business something will go wrong at some point, but we disagree with each other. Well, the problem when you have a disagreement is more than likely you think you're right and the customer thinks they're right. I've never seen a dispute where the customer thinks the other person's right and the other person thinks the customer's right. And what this does is it allows an opportunity to go to the TPO, the redress scheme, to submit what we need to submit, and then they go, hey, actually the customer is right, you should pay them this amount of money, and then you have to do it and you follow protocol, and it just takes out all emotions and makes things objective. The next one that's really impacts us on a day-to-day basis but you probably don't know about is the Law of Property Act 1925. Now, this really modernized the industry and allowed us to go upwards as a trend. So property through time, you may have noticed, started as these big estates with loads of land. Then it was big estates with smaller amounts of land. Then it went from detached to semi-detached, semi-detached to terrace, and then of course blocks of flats. Now, the Act in 1925 allowed the transition of normal property to freehold and leasehold. And this is only 100 years ago that this come to be, and it allows us to no longer own the land or the sky above a property. This is really important because as a country, we're actually really small. We only build on about 6% of the available land in England, and actually we only build on about 3%, but that's another conversation. And so we need to build up. So what this allowed for is block developers to build a block of 200 flats, but for you to not only need to rent a place, you can buy the flat that's within it. So you don't need to worry about the land or anything above it. I get to own this unit, and that's thanks to a very small piece of legislation that had a big impact just 100 years ago. Next is a set of legislation that we have to follow if you want to be a landlord in the UK, and considering you're watching a property investment channel, going to assume you want some tenants eventually, but you can't just move somebody in and rent it out. And a lot of people do this. My mate wants to rent it for a few months. Well, never, ever, ever, ever do that, because if you do it the wrong way and something goes wrong, you can get in a lot of trouble. So let me go through some bits that you might need. Number one, you need a CP12. A CP12 is a gas safety certificate. What it means is that somebody's gone around, a professional, and shown that everything is safe and cushy. The next thing you need is an EICR, which is an electrical safety certificate. Again, let's say you didn't do that. Somebody moved in and there was an electrical fire. Then the first thing you're going to look at is, did you make sure it was safe? And by the way, this is where you can go to prison. If somebody dies in your property and you haven't done an electrical safety certificate, it could be seen as criminal. Okay, so you need to be really careful. Now, I don't want to scare you off on this if I haven't already. We'll see. But the point is, why wouldn't you do everything you can to make sure it's a safe environment? Yes, we're all here to make money. I get that. But you're also providing a home for somebody in the first place. Next is the EPC, the Energy Performance Certificate. You are legally required to not only issue an EPC upon rental, or before it ideally, it also needs an EPC-E. It's very likely, by the way, that it's going to be an EPC-C by 2025. My honest gut is it will be more like 2027, maybe 2028 with all of the delays going on. I wouldn't worry about it too much. There's also going to be a lot of grants going into place for that. There already are. There'll be maximum spends, all of that sort of thing. So it's nothing to worry about, by the way, because the government's going to have to contribute in a heavy way, but it is something to be aware of. On top of that, you need to give people the right to rent, okay? You need to make sure that somebody actually is legally able to rent in the UK, and then you need to give them their rental agreement. The most common type is an assured short hold tenancy, an AST. What this does is puts in writing the agreement you have in place and the terms around it so that they can pay you a monthly rent, and you can get them out if they're not paying it. And you're going to have things like Section 21, Section 8, and Section 10s that all come into play. The main ones are Section 21 and Section 8 to get out a tenant if they're not paying. Now, here's the crux. I'm not saying this is fair, by the way. My opinion is it's bullshit. But if you get one of these wrong, like you don't give the EPC, you don't do all of those checks, all of that sort of thing, and then you try to evict them, you're going to have a lot of problems, okay? Because if they stay there and they know their rights, they're going to drag it out, they're going to go to court and they go, great, can you show me their right to rent in the UK, their right to let? I don't have that. Or what about the AST? Ooh, we actually just had a bit of an email back and forth. Get the right things in place, which is why I always say, just get a lettings manager to take care of the management. You're not a landlord, you are an investor. So why would you want to follow laws in the first place? Trick question. We abide by all laws in Aspire Property Group. All right, some laws out there, let's face it. Have you ever sped before? I'm sure you haven't. But these are laws that often are based around the safety of the individual. And I genuinely do mean this. It's like, why fuck around when somebody's safety is at play? Just play by the rules. They are all there in property, I feel, to protect people. Now, do I feel tenants have more rights or less rights than should? Who cares about my opinion? They're in place for a reason. My genuine opinion is this is why we use professionals. If you fall short, it's going to cost you a lot of money, best case scenario, and if you neglect your duties and God forbid something does go wrong, and this is property and lives, it can go wrong. You can end up in prison. Now, I don't want to scare you. It is very unlikely, but do the right thing. So let me know in the comments, are there any laws that you want to know more about that I can do more videos on for you? If I've missed any as well, let me know the important ones you want to find out about. If you're new to property and you want to educate yourself and find out more, then make sure you hit subscribe and notification bell. And of course, if you could lightly destroy the like button on the way to your next video.